I've talked to a lot of people about their own ancestral healing journeys,
Okay.
and the question that always comes up is, if we're looking at, say, illnesses or behavior patterns that don't serve us well, etc., if we're looking back at our flesh and blood ancestors and are seeing, okay, well, this person had this thing happen so many years ago, generations back, and now I'm sort of reliving that pattern. But then the question comes up, well, how do I know that whether this is an actual physical ancestral thing or a past life that has nothing to do with the people I'm related to by DNA, genetics, etc.? Is there a way to even tell the difference?
Oh, that's a great question. I love that. Yeah, let me just take a minute and kind of ponder that. And I'm trying to see if I can tap into an example of something that I've come across. Well, obviously, it could be both. So if we just for a second narrow it to past lives and not necessarily blood, ancestral healing in current life, I think listeners who know much at all about past lives know that we can bring in a past life trauma that happened to our body in past life that can show up in our life today. And we can discover that, and there are various ways to discover that, and we can release that, release or lessen that symptom that comes from, let's just say I was shot in the back with an arrow in the 1800s, and I have this pain in my back for 15 years. I've never been able to explain it. I discover the past life then. I discover I was shot in the back with an arrow. And often the symptom either goes away completely or it lessens. But what is difficult is all this, I really think, is overlapping in the sense that, let's see if I can make this clear. What if the person who shot me with, and just pulling an example out of the air, what if the Native American from another tribe who shot and perhaps killed me with that arrow is my current life sibling? And what if that sibling also carries that same physical symptom because of the guilt that's unresolved from the past life? And though they're not the one who was shot with the arrow, they did the shooting, they can carry the physical symptom in life today. So that in my humble opinion, it's all intertwined. Does that make sense?
It really does, because, again, with all the research that I've been doing, I've been hearing from so many teachers and researchers in this, is that it's both and. It doesn't have to be just past lives or just genetics. It doesn't always, but it can overlap. So I really appreciate your explaining how that might work. So I'm wondering now, because the thing I love about your work is you telling stories about what you've learned from the people you've worked with. So how about sharing some stories with us?
Yeah, okay, good. So let me, it's like, it's interesting when we're talking, my own stories come forward in my mind almost more easily than other stories. Let me share one story briefly, and then let me see if something else pops into my brain. This is more, and I think this is important perspective for people too, because I don't want the listener to just focus on trauma. Because, and I say that, yes, of course, we have ancestral healing, just bloodline, forget past lives for a minute. We have that, we're carrying the symptom of great-grandfather because he was asphyxiated, and we're carrying that symptom, or something similar, past lives. Let's flip it over and look at skills or dharma. So in my life today, I've certainly never sung on stage, so let me just make that clear to people. But throughout my whole life, actually all the way through school, from elementary school to high school, I sang in choir. And I was fortunate enough as a senior in high school to sing in the top small madrigal group. And I loved that. I've always loved music, and I love to sing. I've been busy doing other things, so I really haven't carried that forward. But I love music, and, you know, like a lot of people, I sing in the car and I sing in the shower and do all that. So here's how it ties to both my bloodline as well as my past life, what you might call bloodline. In my current life, I have family members. Some who actually, I have a family member that went to Juilliard, and I never knew this family member well, but I have, yeah, it's interesting as we're talking, then I'm reminded of things that I might forget to mention. Also in my bloodline, and everybody now has discovered I was raised in a Jewish family, I have two great grandfathers, obviously different sides of my family, who were trained as cantors. So most people probably know in temples and synagogues, there is a rabbi, one or more, and then there's the musical leader who's usually very well educated and schooled and almost trained as much as a rabbi, that we call a cantor, a C-A-N-T-O-R. And so I have that in my bloodline, that capable singing voice. My mother also had a beautiful singing voice. But in my past lives, I know about two past lives. I have a past life as an opera singer, as a capable opera singer in the last 100 years. I also know that over 2,000 years ago, I had a past life where that was tied to the music that went on in what today is Israel, in what was known as the temple, the music that went on in the temple. I was tied to a family that had a direct connection to the music in the old temple. So, you know, that's Dharma. That's skills we bring with us.
If somebody did want to explore doing past life regression with regard to ancestral healing work, can you give sort of an outline of what a session like that would be like, what they could expect?
Yeah, that's great. Well, let me say this might help. Let me just say I guide two types of regression. I guide just what it says. I call it past life soul regression because it's soul level work of healing karma and bringing forward dharma. So I guide past life regression, which means come to the session. I actually do guide past life regression remotely. So that's option 2. We do some interview time. Then I guide the client into relaxation. Please, people out there, there's always this nervousness about, oh, I've been told I can't go into trance, blah, blah, blah. Hypnosis is a natural process of relaxation. Most people have no trouble. I help you learn how to use your intuition. And we discover in that session an important past life, and we then spend time connecting it back to life today. What does it have to do with life today? I'll also just say that I don't choose the past life that comes forward. The client can put out intentions of what they hope to discover. I fully believe that the client's soul self or their higher self and their guides choose the past life. Then I'll just say briefly, I guide a longer type of regression that I only guide in person that's called Between Lives Soul Regression. It is what I just described, and then it goes further. At the end of the past life, we follow that client's soul journey into the spiritual realm. We work at the client's level of higher self to understand who are they as a soul, how do they plan their current life, who are members of their soul pod. We can ask questions to spiritual guides. That's where we could ask questions of, so this symptom I have, is it tied to my great-grandfather who was, you know, accidentally choked or whatever that might be? Does it tie to past life? Does it tie to both? And so that's a longer regression where we also work at the soul level.
Okay, great. So then the second version is if you're doing specifically ancestral healing work, that would be the way to go as opposed to a past life regression.
Correct. And sometimes people do both simply because it gives them more material to work with and more past life information. And then it helps them tie that into current life in ancestral healing.
Okay, great. Okay. Well, looking at the clock, we're not quite out of time yet, so I want to make sure that we are covering everything. Is there anything that I haven't asked you about that you want to make sure that we talk about today?
What comes to my mind when you ask that, Lisa, is people having problematic relationships, because I think that, we can all be, nicey and not exactly airy-fairy, but make it all look lovely where, oh, those souls that I've known before are those souls that I just feel so connected to and so close with, and we resonate so easily. I want people to think about in addition, to think about souls / people, meaning people in your current life, incarnate souls, where you've struggled. It might be a family relationship where you struggled and maybe you had to pull away. A romantic relationship where you really felt connected to this person. Maybe you married, or maybe it was a long-term relationship, even whether there was marriage or not, but ultimately it just didn't work. There are times, and I'm not saying, well, I'm not wanting to condone for everybody, leave and end that complicated romantic relationship, but at times that is how you clean up the karma, where you come into body, you connect with that person, maybe you have children with that person, or maybe it's even just a really, really close friend and you have a 12-year friendship, and then suddenly it isn't working for you anymore. And there are times when the only way to clean up the karma is to step away from the relationship. And my sense would be, at times when you're stepping away from a relationship, you are very likely also doing some ancestral healing by stepping away. So, it's impossible from a broad-based standpoint to say, stay or go. But sometimes leaving is crucial in order for your own soul evolution and potentially for the evolution of that other person.
Right. That makes so much sense. Well, gosh, thank you so much, Linda, for adding a new facet to this really complex conversation about ancestral healing. The past life question has been a big one, and I so appreciate your adding your expertise. This has just been a fascinating conversation. Thank you.
You are so welcome. Thank you for what you're doing. It's a wonderful and important topic. So thank you. It's my pleasure to share this with you.